Welcome this afternoon to Shepherd of the Valley Presbyterian Church. We are so glad to be sharing this space with all of you who love Freya like we love Freya and beyond. She was a long-term member here, over 30 years, and much has been said about how she was our financial secretary for the majority of it, and with her steady hand, she shepherded us through financially, always. So a steady hand and even steadier faith that never wavered when things looked tough. And so we're glad that you're here today to talk about all of the wonderful things that is Freya Schmus. We'll spend time today talking together with gratitude and joy, even as we mourn her passing. So let's open with prayer, and please pray with me. Eternal One, we come today with heavy yet thankful hearts as we speak of Freya Schmus. We are so grateful that you placed her in all of our lives. Speak tenderly to her family and her friends, comforting them in her passing. Embrace us all with an abiding sense of your presence. And in that presence, may we sense that Freya is indeed home. We pray these things in the name of the one we call God with us. Amen. And I believe we're going to have a scripture reading.
Hello, I'm Joy, Freya's granddaughter. From Psalm 16, starting with verse 5. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad, and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You made known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore.
We're now going to sing Abide With Me, and you'll find the lyrics on the back of your bulletin.
Just follows thee. Oh, thank you all so much for being here. My name is David Schmus. I'm Freya's son, and I'm going to be kind of trying to organize a little bit how we're going to share, and there's lots to say about my mom. And so I just want to thank you so much for being here and the love that so many of you have poured out to us and will continue to do so. We're just so grateful for that. And I know my mom touched many lives, and it's just such a blessing to see your faces here to testify to that impact. So first I'd like to invite up my sister Carol to share. So come on up, Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol, Freya's oldest daughter. As we were talking about putting together the service today, at first I said, no, I don't want to speak. I don't think I could do that. But I thought about it, and I decided if I took on the task of talking about her history, I could probably make it through that, so we'll hope so. My mom was born in Los Angeles, her father coming to Los Angeles from Artesia, South Dakota, during the Great Depression, and after finding work as a sound technician in the motion picture studios and getting himself established, he then brought his wife-to-be from South Dakota as well. My mom grew up with her sister Karen in 2 different houses in the Reseda-Tarzana area, one located under what is now the 101 freeway, and the other located what is now under the Tarzana Hospital. So there's no looking back on those memories. Growing up there, there was always a horde of animals on the property, cats, dogs, horses, and probably others as well. We heard stories about how our father used to bring home signed photographs from the stars of Paramount Studios home from work. She got them all the time though, so she just gave them away to her friends. We did find an original manuscript and a set call timesheet from Red Garter starring Rosemary Clooney from 1954 in her possessions, so she kept a few things. Freya graduated with honors from Reseda High School while also competing in rodeo events and winning many ribbons with her horse Nikki. And on the side table over here we have some mementos, including several pictures. She was chosen by the city of Los Angeles to be fire chief for the day, and she earned that honor by being one of the top 5 in the college placement exams in Los Angeles. My mom attended Pomona College in Claremont, where she majored in mathematics and met my father, Wayne. They were married during spring break of their senior year, and after graduation stayed in Claremont for a few more months, where she found her first job at Aerojet General in Azusa. My father, however, was in the Naval Reserve, and so soon they moved to Long Beach, where she found a new job working on the Apollo project for North American Aviation. Her job was to determine the thickness of the heat shield on the return capsule, and she stayed there until she retired in 1967 when I was born to raise her children. By then, my parents had moved to Sun Valley, where they could keep my mom's horses, and where the 3 of us children were born. And in the early 70s, my father's job moved from LA to Rosemead. So the family moved to Hacienda Heights, where my mom lived the better part of 50 years. As us kids were growing up, Freya spent time with Bible Study Fellowship, Girl Scouts, PTA, volunteering in elementary and junior high classrooms, bowling, and acting as the financial secretary for her church. Just about the time I was about to start college and my mom thought about going back to work, she found herself with 3 households of elderly relatives who all insisted they wanted to stay in their homes. So she spent the next 10 years overseeing their households and medical needs. As my mom took out more of their financial affairs, she decided to take a tax course. That course ended up turning into a 14-year career with H&R Block, including eventually becoming an enrolled agent with the IRS. Freya retired from H&R Block in 2002, but still volunteered with the AARP tax aid program at various senior centers, often managing 2 to 3 at a time until her passing. Through her lifetime, she regularly kept contact with her many cousins still in South Dakota. Every 3 years, my mother's family, the Rhodey clan, would meet for a reunion, so we would travel all over the country, usually to someplace new, driving in our motorhome. My siblings and I are very fortunate to have seen so much of the country while growing up. In the early 90s, she found out that the house her father grew up in was about to be repossessed for back taxes. So she made an offer of $100, plus 8 years of back taxes, which ended up being about $900. The house was 2-story, 4-bedroom, 1 bathroom, and the property was most of a city block, but the house consisted of walls and a roof. Everything inside had been gutted by the previous owner in preparation for a remodel that never happened. So over the next several years, my parents and sometimes us kids would spend summers in South Dakota installing installation, electricity, plumbing, cabinets, everything needed to turn it into a functional house. And we would spend time seeing the extended family, going to local events, and buying lots of Black Hills gold jewelry, which we have quite a lot of by now. My mom finally sold the house in 2018 when the drive to get there by herself got just to be a little too much for her. But she still flew back to South Dakota several more times, including in August of this year. Soon after she passed away, we started going through her emails and found that she regularly kept in contact with fellow students from college and many of her friends from Hacienda Heights, as well as many of her extended family still in South Dakota. We also found postcards among her things, and more postcards, and we are still finding postcards. It was her way of tracking the places she'd been to in her life, and she had been to a lot of places. One of her college classmates sent me a note saying, "Your mom was brilliant with an analytical mind." So very true. But she also had a generous and kind spirit. As an accountant, she also kept very thorough accounting records, including, I think, every check she'd ever written. My daughter and I have spent the 2 weeks shredding checks, but in going through them, it was a picture into what was important to her. She gave freely of her time to her family, her church, and her charities. They were all very important to her. She gave freely of her time, her talents, and her possessions to those that she cared about. It was an honor to have her as my mom.
Thank you, Carol. Now I get to hear from my other sister, Deanna Monzon.
Hello. Yeah, as David said, I'm Deanna, and I'm the middle child. And Carol, you were supposed to hold it together. That was the deal. So thank you all for being here today. Your presence and your support for my family and the blessing that so many of you were to my mom are so appreciated. So I don't know how to adequately describe a wonderful mom and honor a life well lived in just a few minutes. Words are so often insufficient at times like this, but I hope I can give you a deeper glimpse into the beautiful soul of this special lady that we knew and loved. I think the single thing that I loved most about my mom is that she was present, and not just in a passive, in-the-room way, but in an active, supportive, sacrificial way. When Carol and I were in Girl Scouts, she was the Girl Scout troop leader. When I wanted to be Cinderella or Peter Pan or Pocahontas for Halloween, she sewed my costume, and she was an amazing seamstress. When I got home from school every day, she was there. And as simple as that sounds, that's how I knew my little world was okay. When Carol, David, and I were in the Los Altos High School marching band, my mom and dad were selling hot dogs and chili at the football concession stand to support the band boosters for years. Yeah. When I was applying to colleges, my mom would stay up late with me and type my handwritten essay responses. Not fun. When I had a family of my own, she was my first call whenever I needed a babysitter or a dog sitter or a favor. She became my niece Julie's special grandma because Julie needed a special grandma. My mom was at every piano recital, ballet performance, school play, parent-teacher conference, local swim meet, dressage competition, and marching band field show, every graduation, birthday party, baby shower, wedding, and holiday gathering. She was at every important occasion as a mom and a grandma. She cheered and clapped and brought flowers and presents. She made time. She showed up. She was actively and intentionally present. So my mom was a brilliant lady, as you've heard, a math major, good with numbers and details. She knew the value of managing one's finances. She also knew that her kids were going to need these skills when they grew up. So when my siblings and I were in high school, we each got a turn for several months to pay all our parents' bills. We would write out the checks from their account, and she would sign them. We would record everything in the check register with a running balance and then reconcile it to the bank statement when it came in the mail. It was genius. We got to see where the money went. We got to decide, with coaching, when to mail the bills so as not to put the account in overdraft. we got to experience a bit of the stress of making the money last until the next paycheck without it actually being our responsibility. I'd never appreciated my dad's hard work in bringing home the bacon more than I did at that time, and the things my mom taught me then have shaped my entire life. At the beginning of my junior year of college, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and I just happened to be balancing my checkbook just like Mom taught me, and totally loving it, and I thought, what kind of job would let me do this all day long? So naturally, I switched my major to accounting, became a CPA, and happily made a career out of that affinity for balancing the books. And I still love budgeting and reconciling bank accounts to this day. Weird, I know, but thanks, Mom, for helping me find my way. My sweet mom was extremely sentimental. I knew she kept things, but I had no idea of the magnitude of the understatement of that phrase until my mom had knee surgery in 2019, and I went to stay with her in the days after we brought her home from the hospital. This was the house I'd grown up in. So at one point on the first day, I had tried to open the door to my old bedroom to find that I could only open it a quarter of the way. When I stuck my head inside, I discovered that my entire room was filled wall to wall with bags and boxes of, well, stuff that looked an awful lot like trash. I decided I was going to do something about that. I'd spend the days caring for Mom through her recovery and working remotely while she rested. But after Mom got to bed each night, I would head into my old bedroom and began sorting through the piles of stuff. What I found was that my mom had kept every letter, every birthday card, every thank you note, every Christmas card, every invitation, every event program, and every newspaper article that she had ever received from anyone. It seemed like they were all there, over 60 years worth. She had even printed out hundreds and hundreds of emails that she'd received over the past decades. Many of these keepers were mixed with piles of pre-sort mail that she had never managed to open and shoved into thin plastic Vons bags at some point, probably in an effort to clean up. My hunch is that she had every good intention of going through those bags later and retrieving what was valuable. But then the next bag would get started, and time never seemed to allow her to get back to the previous ones. Many of the earlier keepers were lovingly filed in shoe boxes by year, yellowed by time, and dusty from decades under a bed or in a closet, or as of late, in the vault of Vons bags that my room had become. I, for better or worse, did not inherit the sentimental gene from my mom. So the only way I can rationalize what I experienced that week as I sorted and shredded and organized was that each of these keepers was a memory, a small part of one of you or someone else who had touched her life, a part that she could not bring herself to let go of. And so she didn't. She cherished connections with friends and family in a deeply meaningful way. All those pieces of paper were tokens of the value she placed on relationships and people. And although I didn't love sorting through those bags into the wee hours of the morning all that week, I loved the woman who cared enough to know and to remember and cherish what they contained. After Mom passed, we were all in her apartment at Morningside trying to begin the difficult task of going through all her belongings. One thing we found right away was a box of See's candy in a See's candy bag sitting on her kitchen counter. No card, no sticky note with instructions, just sitting there waiting for someone. So of course, we opened it. And over the next several days of hard work there, we appreciated the treat that Mom had unintentionally left for us. As we would come and go from Mom's apartment at least once a day, we would listen to the messages on her answering machine. Yes, she still had an answering machine. For the first few days, there were several messages that showed on the display as 34B, and a little voice with an accent we could not quite identify would say, "Hello, please call me back." No name, no number. We didn't know who to call or why, so we didn't, but the calls kept coming. On the second day, Carol was there when it rang, so she picked up the phone and spoke to 34B, told her that Freya had passed away. Condolences were expressed, and we expected that would be the end of it. But no, the calls kept coming. So finally, about 4 days in, I was there when 34B called again, and I picked it up. She told me her name was Henrietta. She was 96 years old. She lived in Morningside, where my mom lived, in an apartment at 34B, and she, like my mom, was Norwegian, and they had forged a friendship over this common ground. And as my mom often did with those who were less mobile, she took to helping Henrietta with errands and other things. Henrietta told me over and over I just can't believe she's gone. And then she asked me if she owed my mom any money for the See's candy that my mom would often buy her. Oops. I assured her that she didn't, without mentioning that there were only 2 pieces left in her box. To which Henrietta softly responded, "She was my best friend." I am so thankful that I picked up the phone that day to hear Henrietta tell me that. I don't know how long she and my mom were friends, but I know that my mom loved to help people, and isn't that what friends do? When people ask me, what is the best advice you've ever received, I immediately credit my mom with it, even though it wasn't so much advice as it was a profound response to a question. I was about 8 years old enough to spend times at my friends' houses for playtime or sleepovers, and I had started to notice that other kids' parents would yell and fight when I was at their houses. My parents had never done that. In fact, I don't think I ever heard them raise their voices at each other in anger. I remember sitting on my mom's bed while she was working at her desk and asking, "Mom, why don't you and Dad ever fight?" And without skipping a beat, she responded, "What's there to fight about?" As an 8-year-old, I naively accepted that as a reasonable and irrefutable answer and skipped off. But somehow the gravity of that response stuck with me. Think about it. Who actually believes that and lives that way? If you look around our world today, it seems that most people would say there's plenty to fight about. But Romans 12 tells us to live in harmony with one another, and that as much as it is up to us to live at peace with everyone. In Ephesians, we are called to be kind and compassionate to one another. Proverbs 20 says, "Avoiding a fight is a mark of honor. Only fools insist on arguing." So I guess my mom was right. Her response was simply said, but deeply grounded in biblical truth and wisdom. I'm so grateful for the example of living peacefully with others that my mom gave to me and my brother and sister. I've heard from many that the death of a parent can cause huge rifts amongst siblings. There has not been one cross word, hurtful action, or selfish claim between us. I have found so much love, help, support, and unity as we've worked together over the past several weeks. And I see my mom's peaceful spirit so clearly in the 2 of them. Not done yet. That was just a pause, breathing pause. Be glad you're all sitting, poor Dave. My mom always told me how proud of me she was, of all of us kids. But there was one time that I know I let her down, and I remember it vividly because of the way she handled it. It was in December. I was probably 9 or 10. Carol and Dave and I were home with my mom, and we were going to decorate the Christmas tree together later that night. But she asked that we each clean our room first. Well, you can imagine how that went. There were a few general reminders from her that night, but basically we squandered the entire night by procrastinating and goofing off, and never quite got around to cleaning our rooms. Finally, at bedtime, I went to my room, and there on my pillow, on my mess of an unmade bed, was a note from Mom. In it, she explained how she had stayed home from going to a Christmas party with Dad to be with us that night so that we could have a special time together to decorate the Christmas tree. She had only asked one simple thing of us, but none of us had done it. I didn't do it. Well, after reading those letters, you better believe that we each cleaned our room spotless in record time, brushed our teeth, hopped into bed like the perfect little angels we were supposed to have been that night. But my mom did not yell or scream. She didn't beg or nag. She just quietly let us know that she loved us enough to miss out on the party to be with us. There was no guilt trip, no anger. It just grieved her heart. She had hoped that we would honor the sacrifice and make the choice to be with her out of love for her. But in our lack of understanding and our own selfishness, we put our plans first. And in the end, it was the 3 of us who missed out that night. When I think back on her invitation, her sacrifice, and her gentle response to our lack of gratitude, it reminds me of the open invitation of another to all of us. I think if Jesus left a note on our pillow, it might sound like this. Dear one, I left the party in heaven with my Father so that you and I could be together. I sacrificed everything, even my own life, so that you would understand how much I long to be with you. I only asked one thing of you in return, that you accept the free gift of love and forgiveness that I offer. Have you done what is required so that we can be together? Or like 9-year-old Deanna, have you squandered the time you were given and valued your own plans and priorities above me above the abundant life on earth that I have purposed for you and the eternal home in heaven that I have prepared for you. And yet, even now, it is not too late. Jesus doesn't yell or scream. He doesn't beg or nag. He just quietly laid down his life to let us know how much he loves us and longs to spend eternity with each of us. So I ask you, in the context of my childhood story, have you cleaned your room? Have you done the one thing asked of you? There is no guilt trip, no anger. It only grieves his heart if you are missing out. If my mom could come back and say one thing to us, I know this would be it. Because in the end, nothing else really matters. Not even what you think of her or of me or my possible offense to you right now. What matters is that the one who created you and loves you has given you an invitation. What matters, dear one, is what you do with it. And so, it is with tears and with joy that I honor and celebrate my mom today. Her gentleness, her generosity, her sentimental heart, her selfless devotion to family and friends, and the tireless offering of her time and talents for the benefit of others. But most of all, I will remember my mom for the way she reflected the heart of Jesus, for the foundation of faith that she laid for me and for my family that will leave a lasting legacy. I know that my mom is whole and healed, and she knows true love at last in the glorious presence of her Savior. I know that she heard those promised words, well done, good and faithful servant, enter into your rest. And I know that I will see her again, because this time, Mom, I have cleaned my room.
Thank you, Deanna. That was beautiful. Man, I have amazing sisters. With every box of checkbooks or photos or records that they went through, I just say, God, dear God, thank you, God, for those two, because I didn't do much of that. And also, a point of clarification, I'm sure the two of them cleaned their room. I'll just leave it at that. I now like to bring up my mom's only daughter-in-law and my amazing wife, Elizabeth.
I just reiterate thanking you all for coming. I mean, I know in this room are people that love Freya and people that love Freya's children. So thank you for those of you who came to support us. As the next Mrs. Schmus in this family line, I would like to share a side of Freya that many of you might not have gotten to see, and hopefully a few laughs along the way. Honestly, I probably have Freya to thank for even becoming the next Mrs. Schmus, because David and I had maybe been on one date, if you call going with him and his 3 friends to a beach bonfire a date. But thanks to Freya, David was told to bring a date to Deanna and Matt's wedding rehearsal and wedding the next day. And so at the ripe old age of 19, I was introduced to the entire Schmus family on our first and second real dates. And then followed her invitation to bring me along that summer to the roadie reunion, since Carol and Deanna were now married, and so even from the very start, Freya was including me in her family. I still remember Freya coming out to my college sorority wedding shower and sharing with the whole group that she had been praying for someone for David, someone special, because he really needed a wife. Maybe she was looking for someone who would finally clean his room. So she said that aloud and then proceeded to give me quite a personal piece of clothing, to my astonishment and embarrassment. She also invited me to go shopping with her for her mother of the groom dress at our wedding, which was so sweet. Well, as she was paying for the dress we finally chose, the cashier butchered her last name. I was quite offended. I thought to myself, I will not stand for that when I am Mrs. Schmus. I will tell everyone how to say it correctly. Well, I quickly learned it was easier to just let it go, at least with sales clerks. As a mother-in-law and grandmother, Freya was the very opposite of the typical nagging, controlling, jealous of her son type of mother-in-law, and instead would offer to babysit so we could have a date night, or send me articles and eventually emails to encourage me to let my house be a little dirtier because it was actually good for the kids' immune systems. We went through some life-altering times as a family, and Freya was always there, helping as she could, but not advice giving. She brought Kaylin and Annie to the hospital every single day that our baby Michael was in the hospital, so all of us could be together and it would be less traumatic for all. And along with help from my mom, she kept our home running for the sweet month that he was with us. She even babysat him. I think at one point we were in the hospital a few days, then we had him home for a week, and then we were back for 2 weeks. And right in the middle of that point, because I went back and looked it up, she came and said, "I think the girls really need you to take them out to Del Taco for a date." And so she came and held the baby because she knew I wouldn't leave otherwise. Well, by the time we got home from our tacos and sweet time away from the hospital, she promptly told me that I was not to leave him again because she had tried to sing him all the same songs she had heard me singing. And she had tried rocking and standing in all the same ways, she said, but he knew the difference and he fussed the entire time until he was back in my arms. And when we came home with empty arms, she gave us the space to grieve. Our personalities probably couldn't have been more opposite, other than maybe the sentimentality. I don't know, I got that, which was a blessing in many ways. When we buried our little boy, it never occurred to me to think about flowers or anything that we would need, but it did to her. She was always showing up with the most beautiful and appropriate arrangements at just the right times. Whether it was adorning his tiny little casket or coming to years and years and even last year's dance recitals, where I could never seem to remember that I was supposed to bring flowers, or to the many graduations where, again, she remembered to bring beautiful flowers. She even brought flowers to me each Mother's Day, thanking me for mothering her grandbabies, and suggested that we spend Mother's Day as a little family and celebrate her on Grandmother's Day instead. But maybe the most poignant memory in my mind is the year I was fighting cancer, and the doctors told us we couldn't attend any Christmas holiday gatherings because my blood cell counts were too low to risk an infection at this point in my 6th month of chemo. Well, Freya, for all of her inclusion of everyone, every year, she would move the date just to get everyone there. Well, she didn't blink an eye. Instead, told us, "I'll keep the tree up until you can come over and have Christmas." And then proceeded to cook the first ever gluten-free, dairy-free Christmas, which after 20 years in, we know was really hard. But we didn't know that before that year. It was that special dinner for just our little family of 5 that year, when according to the medical test numbers, very well could have been my last Christmas, that both her enormous Pasadena home and her more enormous heart seemed the largest it had ever been. And I knew none of us would ever forget it. Another Christmas, 5 years later, we brought Beth home, just 2 days before Christmas. But Freya and the family she had led by example for many years all had stockings and presents as if Beth had always been expected. In fact, she always made sure there was a stocking for anyone coming to Christmas Eve at her house, family or otherwise. And eventually, she would bring those stockings to my house. Just 2 years ago, we brought home our little boy Nathan from the hospital in early December. Kaylin and Annie had just gotten married, and Joy was busy with all the senior year activities, dance, and debate season, and Freya saw the need and stepped in to fill it. She came over most Thursdays from then on, and when she didn't know we were looking, Joy and I got to watch our unusually quiet grandma very animatedly chatting it up with baby Nathan the entire time, and then eventually reading him piles and piles of books. So that was the secret to getting Grandma to talk. Joy and I said, "Just put a baby in her lap." Well, he definitely talks the most and has the largest vocabulary of any of my other 2-year-olds, so I think she had something to do with that. Well, in classic Freya style, the week before her accident, she was watching the kids on Thursday, but she had to leave in time to get to the Sons of Norway monthly potluck. And I know some of you from the Lodge are here and brought flowers, and thank you so much. According to Kaylin, even though sometimes it was a little boring, she had 2 more grandkids now to secure college scholarships for. Wasn't it just perfectly timed that Joy, the youngest of that generation of grandkids, won the largest National Sons of Norway scholarship as an engineering student? Inspired by her grandma who had worked on the Apollo heat shields, and by the many, many shelves of books Grandma had given to her year after year about World War II and Norwegian experiences. I'm so grateful she got to revel in the grandmotherly pride of this accomplishment after years of loyalty to both her heritage and her faithful service to her family. A year ago, Hope and Nathan and I got to be at the park across the street from Morningside with Grandma, who decided that now was as good a time as any to show Hope how to swing properly. So she just hopped on the swing like she was not 82 and got to it. After my initial shock and fear that everyone was going to blame me if she fell off and seriously injured herself, I quickly realized that this was a priceless memory, and I whipped out my phone and captured it. Well, according to Auntie Karen, swinging had been Freya's favorite pastime as a child, and their house had the tallest metal swing set in the neighborhood that somehow had escaped being collected for use in the war. Well, we finally figured out where Kaylin got her love of swinging. And as we looked through her things, there were still, what do you call them, ration stamps for food and things, because when Freya was a child, they had her name on them. Well, at some point, Well, for Christmas this year, if you all promise not to tell, Freya's youngest grandchildren, Hope and Nathan, and her California great-grandchildren, Elise Freya, and soon to be out Lizzie Rose, are getting a tall metal swing set where they can continue to enjoy the remarkable heritage of their grandmother, who I can just picture teaching baby Michael to swing along with them from heaven.
Thank you, honey. All right, we're going to hear now from the kind of next generation a bit. Renee, why don't you come on up and share?
Hi, everybody. My name is Renee Severin. I am Freya's granddaughter and Deanna's daughter. I think that when you lose a loved one, a lot of your emotional and physical energy is dedicated trying to hang on to whatever is left of them in this world, the tangible items, be that ashes, gravestones, gifts they've given you, items that belong to them that you can pass down as heirlooms, photos, whatever it is. But in these moments, I am most thankful for the things our loved ones have given us that can't be lost or destroyed. Memories, passions, even personality traits or physical characteristics. So in this time of hanging on, I've looked to the ways that I carry my grandmother with me. I know that I have her hardy Norwegian bloodlines. I see it in my height, my very pale skin, and my inexplicable love for snowy weather. I know that I have my grandmother's problem-solving skills and analytical mind, tools that both she and my mother used and applied in the fields of mathematics and accounting, and that I now use in my work as an attorney. But the dearest thing that I get to hold on to is our shared love of horses. And if you know anything about me, it should come as no surprise that I'm talking about this right now. I don't know how much my grandma publicized this to the world, but she was an accomplished horsewoman in her younger years, and her love of horses never faded. I'm honored that I get to carry that legacy with me. And I know what you're thinking. Lots of little kids go through a horse phase or a cowboy phase. How is this any different? Well, there are some of us, like myself and my grandmother, who never quite grow out of that phase. The youthful obsession turns into a lifelong passion, a love for these creatures and the time we spend with them that is woven into the very fabric of our being. That's what I share with my grandmother. And I have her to thank for it, too. When I was 4 years old, we were in Traverse City, Michigan for one of the Rohde family reunions. My grandmother took all of her kids and grandkids to a farm where they plopped us tiny kiddos on horses and led us on a little walk around the barn. I was hooked. I don't think there's been a day that's gone by since then that I haven't thought about horses. My grandmother was ecstatic to have a grandkid who loved horses. Well, at least as I can best interpret her quiet and composed ways. She would sometimes drop little tidbits about her horses or her riding experience. We'd be around horses and it would spark a memory that she'd share, the treats they'd give them, what one of her saddles looked like, what their competitions looked like. Just little details and facts, never a full narrative, but enough to create that bond of shared experience and shared passion. There's likely a number of people in this room who have a job or hobby that has its own language of sorts, or you participate in an activity, and the way that people engage in that activity is really telling for how into it they are. The equestrian world is one of those spaces, and my grandma would drop just enough information that we both knew she was the real deal. A quick story to illustrate that point. In April of 2010, my grandma came to my very first riding competition. I was 13 years old, bouncing around on an old quarter horse named Pokey. My grandma was standing by the side of the arena with my parents, watching one of my classes, and I made a mistake. Pokey had picked up the wrong lead in the canter, and I didn't notice. As I rode by where my grandma was standing, she mumbled, "Wrong lead," just quiet enough that the judge couldn't hear her. So I took a panicked look at my horse's shoulders, realized she was right, and quickly fixed the mistake while the judge was looking the other way. Continued on with my ride, cool as a cucumber, as if my grandma hadn't just given me unauthorized coaching to fix a major error. And I know that anecdote might be half gibberish if you don't know anything about horses, and I can't put a bow on the story to say that with my grandma's coaching, I won a first place ribbon, or that I've never, made that mistake in competition again. But to me, that story is an embodiment of our shared passion. It's a moment where both of us existed in this crazy little horse-loving bubble together. I'm so thankful for the moments I got to see my grandmother with horses. She would often walk up to a horse, give it a little pat on the neck, and spend a long time standing by the horse's head, running her hand over the horse's soft nose, looking into their eyes and gently talking to the horse, often asking them questions. How are you? Did you do a good job today? You're a sweet one, aren't you? As a kid, this behavior baffled me. You ride the horse, you brush the horse, you give the horse treats, you don't just stand there with the horse. And while my grandmother's actions were different from how I interacted with horses in my younger days, my husband lovingly pointed out this morning that I now interact with horses in the same ways my grandma did. As I now strive to hang on to pieces of my grandmother, I have so much appreciation for those moments. They are a raw reflection of the slow and caring intention that she lived her life with. We live in a busy and overwhelming world. But my grandma had this incredible countercultural ability to make the world around her slow down, just a little bit. I hope that my grandmother's serenity is a piece of her that we all have the opportunity to carry with us. I hope that her memory is a reminder to take deep breaths, to pause more frequently than the world would allow, to ask questions and find contentment in quiet mystery, to listen deeply with the goal of caring well instead of changing minds, to have a patient love so expansive that all feel welcome. A reminder to live one day at a time, enjoy one moment at a time, ever moving towards peace. And just maybe, Next time you drive by a field of horses, my grandmother's memory will spark a simple, uncomplicated joy to add to the treasure trove of her legacies carried in all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. That was a picture of my mom that I didn't really know much about, so what a gift that was. All right, Kaylin, can you come up and share?
Baby lettuce, spinach, red and green romaine, red and green oak leaf, chard, arugula, endive, radicchio, and beet greens. The first and really only time I ever saw my grandma, who I like to call Blue Nana, go on an angry rant was when someone thought it was a good idea to bring spring mix to a potluck my parents were throwing. I guess that person didn't understand how truly awful spring mix is. Hi, my name is Kaylin. I am Freya's third granddaughter and oldest biological daughter of her youngest son, David. I have lots of memories of playing at my grandma's house. At the Pasadena house, us cousins would play library with her extensive book collection. We would dangle ropes and baskets off of her indoor balcony, trying to haul things up and down. She had an exercise bike, and we'd put one kid, typically me and Renee, on each pedal, and we'd try to make it go. Or we'd race each other on a stationary bike. Don't know how that worked. We would play reporters with her typewriter she got when she graduated high school. We'd play some sort of magic or animal game in her backyard. We'd brave all the spiders to go into her basement, or we'd play trampoline on her waterbed, and thus messing up her display of stuffed bunnies. At the Daytona house, we would mostly climb her avocado tree, swing on the swing set, make paths in the forest leaves, and try to set up her huge Christmas tree. Wow, did she have a system of poles, branches, 3 different types of lights, and tons of ornaments. I think it was 12 feet tall. Probably wasn't actually, but you know. She always let us just be kids and had value for us having fun and being creative. As I got older, I appreciated her help with taxes, college scholarships through Sons of Norway, her gifts of stocks to help with college tuition and expenses, her time spent with us working on a puzzle or celebrating holidays in her home. She was a constant, steady presence at every family gathering, and I'm going to miss that. In 2020, 5 of her grandkids were graduating college, and 3 of the ceremonies were on one weekend in 3 different states, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I think she had plane tickets to make them all before COVID shut it down. She had tremendous value for us. She always made it to my dance recitals with a bouquet of flowers. She may not have said much, but she was always there to support. When my husband and I were picking out baby names, Joe knew how much she meant to me and suggested we give our first daughter the middle name of Freya to honor my grandma's presence in our lives and her legacy. When Elise Freya was born, I was mostly asleep in the hospital bed, and Joe was in the bathroom. I kind of heard something, but then Joe came out and found Blue Nana in our room with flowers and a hand-knit baby blanket. She said hi, cooed at Elise, and then just left. She was barely there 10 minutes. We were kind of just staring at each other after that, like, what happened? It was the sweetest thing, especially since I know how long it takes to knit anything, hence why I crochet. Also, that she just drove all the way to Newport Beach, showed up, and then left, just to show us she cared. I want to wrap up with this. Joe and I inherited her van. One day we were driving it, and Joe pointed to a symbol on the display and asked what it meant. I said, it looks like a CD. We pressed eject, and it was Maranatha Singer's Top 25 Hits. I reinserted it, which cued it to play. As we were listening, the 3rd song on that CD struck me in a whole new way as a picture of what Blue Nana is doing in heaven right now. This life on earth, according to C.S. Lewis, is like the night, but heaven is like the morning and the beginning of a new day. So I'd like to close by singing the opening of that song. And I'd like you to picture Freya doing and singing this in heaven right now. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. I will say this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylin. What a gift that was. Wow, I can see my mom had quite the impact on so many people and has left quite a legacy through her family. And I'm, of course, have had just been a huge beneficiary of her and a life well lived. You know, as I said earlier, thank you so much for being here. My mom really did lead a life of service that touched so many of us. Being back in this sanctuary reminds me of a memory that testifies of her faithfulness. My mom made sure we were here in church. This is where we grew up, me and my sisters and our family. Go to church. I went to youth group here in my kind of formative youth years. And my mom had a rule. The rule was, if we had too much fun on Saturday night and stayed out too late that we couldn't get up for church in the morning, well, gosh darn it, the next Saturday night, we better be at home. And, you know, my mom wasn't overly strict, and I, as the youngest boy child, probably got away with the most. But she had a good memory. And, man, she remembered. And that's a rule she enforced. And I'm so glad she did, honestly. What a gift it was to be held accountable to be in God's house every week growing up. Another memory that comes up being in this building is not so much about my mom, but it testifies to the kind of life she lived. I was actually on staff here at this church for about a year, and I got to preach a couple times. And one of those times I preached about the movie Up. And I'm going to talk about it again, so if you're here from SOTV, you might be wondering, is this all I talk about? Well, maybe, but anyway. Yes, the Pixar movie about Mr. Fredrickson and his search for adventure, his determination to float his house with thousands of helium balloons down to Paradise Falls in South America. However, as you know, his search for adventure was hijacked by Russell, an annoying little wilderness explorer scout who knocked on his door at exactly the wrong moment. You know, every good movie asks an important question and then seeks to provide a compelling answer. I believe the movie Up was asking the question, what is the true nature of adventure? Then at the movie's critical moment when Mr. Fredrickson has to choose between living in his house in Paradise Falls, essentially choosing himself and his own desires, or choosing to go save an annoying little boy who desperately needed a father figure in his life. Mr. Fredrickson shows all of us that the true nature of adventure is loving other people. Now, my mom would not have piloted a floating house to go after a psychotic evil explorer to save a little boy and his bird. But I love the final scene in the movie where Mr. Fredrickson and Russell are sitting there eating ice cream and competitively counting red and blue cars. My mom would have done that. And she did do that. You see, my mom had the ministry of presence, as so many people have testified about today. She gave much of her life to loving older relatives. Her love for my oldest niece, Julie, is just so special. Her inclusion of our foster daughter, Beth, and now our two little ones, Hope and Nathan, her inclusion of them into her family particularly demonstrates her heart and ministry of presence. Here are additional few ways she served me, and I'm not sure how much this testifies, it testifies both to my mom's incredible servant heart, but also to the narcissism of the youngest son of a family. My sister testified how she actually would type our papers growing up. I don't think my sisters know this. I actually woke my mom up out of a dead sleep to type a paper for me. Yeah, I know. That's pretty terrible. But she did it, believe it or not. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that was a good thing. Honestly, I think probably would have been better if she'd have said, I'm not typing her paper, son, go figure it out. But nonetheless, she had a servant heart. My mom helped stoke my love of current events, of news, of history. So much of what I am is because of those conversations we had in the car or at home, you know. It's always a little bit funny to me that I don't really fit in. My dad's an engineer, my mom's a mathematician, my sisters are a CPA, and also a technical sales person and a biology major. And I'm a history teacher and pastor, and you know, I don't really fit into that line of mental acuity, if you will, but nonetheless, I owe much of that to my mom, that it's shaping the person I am. And my mom also had a gift for anonymous giving. And there was a particular story that we'd like to sort of share with you now, in the form of a kind of a children's message. Elizabeth, you want to come up? And we had in this church, particularly in Presbyterian churches, I think in general, there's kind of a history of a bit of a children's sermon, if you will. And so we'd like to sort of honor that tradition now with this story that was so dear to my mom.
Well, I should be saying any little kids come to the front, but our little kids are out on a walk because they were getting wiggly. And I think these two little kids may not be able to really absorb the message. So the rest of you, just be a little kid for a minute and pretend your grandma or mom is reading you a story. Once upon a time, in a large forest, there lived a very furry bunny. He had one lop ear and a tiny black nose and unusually shiny eyes. His name was Barrington. Barrington was not really a very handsome bunny. He was brown and speckled, and his ears didn't stand up quite right, but he could hop, and he was, as I have said, very furry. In a way, winter is fun for bunnies. After all, it gives them an opportunity to hop in the snow and then turn around and see where they have hopped. So in a way, winter was fun for Barrington. But in another way, winter made Barrington sad. For you see, winter marked the time when all of the animal families got together in their cozy homes to celebrate Christmas. He would hop, and he was very furry, but as far as Barrington knew, he was the only bunny in his forest. When Christmas Eve finally came, Barrington did not feel like going home all by himself, so he decided that he would hop for a while in the clearing in the center of the forest. Hop, hop, hippity hop. Barrington made tracks in the fresh snow. Hop, hop, hippity hop. Then he cocked his head and looked back at the wonderful designs he had been making. Bunnies, he thought to himself, can hop, and they are very warm too, and because of how furry they are. But Barrington wasn't really sure whether or not this was true of all bunnies, since he hadn't met another bunny. Well, when it got too dark to see the tracks that he had been making with his hop, hop, hippity hops, he decided he would go home. On his way, however, he passed a large oak tree, and high up in the branches there were a great deal of excited chattering going on. Barrington looked up. It was a squirrel family. What a marvelous time they seemed to be having. Hello up there, cried Barrington. Hello down there, came the reply. Having a Christmas party, asked Barrington. Oh yes, answered the squirrels. It's a Christmas Eve and everyone is having a Christmas party. May I come to your Christmas party? Barrington said softly. Are you a squirrel? No. What are you then? A bunny. A bunny? Yes. Well, how can you come to the party if you're a bunny? Bunnies can't climb trees. Oh, that's true, said Barrington thoughtfully. But I can hop and I'm very furry and warm. We're sorry, called the squirrels. We don't know anything about hopping and furriness, but we do know that in order to come to our house, you have to be able to climb trees. Oh, well, said Barrington. Merry Christmas. And the unfortunate bunny hopped off toward his tiny house. It was beginning to snow, and Barrington reached the river. And near the riverbank was a wonderfully constructed house of sticks and mud, and inside there was singing. It's the beavers, thought Barrington. Maybe they will let me come to their party. And so he knocked on the door. Who's out there? Called a voice. Barrington Bunny, he replied. There was a long pause, and then a shiny beaver head broke through the water. "Hello, Barrington," said the beaver. "May I come to your Christmas party?" asked Barrington softly. The beaver thought for a while, and then he said, "I suppose so. Do you know how to swim?" "No," said Barrington, "but I can hop, and I'm very furry and warm." "Sorry," said the beaver. "I don't know anything about hopping and being furry, but I do know that in order to come to our house, you have to be able to swim." "Oh, well," Barrington muttered, his eyes filling with tears. "I suppose that's true. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," called the beaver, and he disappeared beneath the surface of the water. Even being as furry as he was, Barrington was beginning to get cold, and the snow was falling so hard that his tiny bunny eyes could scarcely see what was ahead of him. He was almost home, however, when he heard the excited squeaking of field mice beneath the ground. "It's a party," thought Barrington, and suddenly he blurted out through his tears, "Hello, field mice, this is Barrington Bunny. May I come to your party, please?" But the wind was howling so loudly and Barrington was sobbing so much that none of the field mice heard him. And when there was no response at all, Barrington just sat down in the snow and began to cry with all his might. Bunnies, he thought, aren't any good to anyone. What good is it to be furry and hop if you don't have family on Christmas Eve? Barrington cried and cried, and when he stopped crying, he began to bite on his little bunny foot. But he did not move from where he was sitting in the snow, and suddenly he was aware that he was not alone. He looked up and strained his very shiny eyes to see who was there. To his surprise, he saw a great silver wolf. The wolf was large and strong, and his eyes flashed with fire. But he was the most beautiful, majestic animal Barrington had ever seen. For a long time, the silver wolf didn't say anything at all. He just stood there and looked at Barrington with those terrible eyes. Then slowly and deliberately, the wolf spoke. "Barrington," he asked in a gentle voice, "why are you sitting in the snow?" "Because it's Christmas Eve," said Barrington, "and I don't have any family, and bunnies aren't any good to anyone." "Bunnies are too good," said the wolf. "Bunnies can hop, and they are very warm." "What good is that?" Barrington sniffled. "Well, it is very good indeed, the wolf went on, "because it is a gift that bunnies are given, a free gift with no strings attached. And every gift that is given to anyone is given for a reason. Someday you will see why it is good to hop and to be warm and furry." "But it's Christmas," moaned Barrington, "and I'm all alone. I don't have any family at all." "Well, of course you do," replied the great silver wolf. "All of the animals in the forest are your family." And then the wolf disappeared. He simply wasn't there. Barrington had only blinked his eyes, and when he looked, that wolf was gone. But Barrington thought, all of the animals in the forest are my family? And it's good to be a bunny. Bunnies can hop, and that's a gift, a free gift. So on into the night, Barrington worked. And first he found the best stick that he could, and that was difficult because of all the snow. And hop, hop, hippity hop, off he went to the beaver's house, and he left the stick just outside the door with a note on it that read, "Here is a good stick for your house. It's a gift, a free gift, no strings attached. Signed, a member of your family." "It's a good thing that I can hop," he said, "because the snow is very deep, and no other animals could get this far." Then Barrington dug, and soon he had gathered enough dead leaves and grass to make the squirrel's nest even warmer. Hop, hop, hippity hop, and he laid these just under the large oak tree and attached a message, a gift, a free gift from a member of your family. It was late when Barrington finally started home, and what made things worse was that he knew a blizzard was beginning. Hop, hop, hippity hop. Soon poor Barrington got lost. The wind howled furiously, and it was very, very cold. "It certainly is cold," he said out loud, "and it's a good thing I'm a furry, fuzzy bunny, and I could stay warm. But if I don't find my way home soon, I might just freeze." Squeak, squeak, squeak. And then he saw it. A baby field mouse lost in the snow, and the little mouse was crying. "Hello, little mouse," Barrington called. "Don't cry, I'll be right there." And hop, hop, hippity hop, 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 hippity hop. He got himself right beside that tiny mouse. "I'm lost," sobbed the little fellow. "I'll never find my way home, and I know I'm going to freeze." "Well, you will not freeze," said Barrington, "because I'm a bunny, and bunnies are very furry and warm. You stay right where you are, and I will cover you up." And Barrington lay on top of that little mouse and hugged him tight. And the tiny fellow felt himself surrounded by all that warm fur, and he cried for a while, but soon, snug and warm, he fell asleep. Barrington had only 2 thoughts that long, cold night. First, he thought, "It is so good to be a bunny. Bunnies are very furry and warm." And then when he felt the heart of the tiny mouse beneath him beating regularly, he said, "And all of the families in the forest are my family." Well, the next morning, the field mouse found their little boy asleep in the snow, warm and snug, beneath the furry body of a lifeless bunny. In their relief and excitement, they didn't even think to question where the bunny had come from. And as for the beavers and squirrels, they still wonder which member of their family left little gifts for them that Christmas Eve. There was no sound that day. The howling wind had stopped, and no one noticed the great silver wolf or how he came, but he came and he stood beside that brown, lop-eared, lifeless bunny without moving or saying a word all of Christmas Day until it was night, and then he disappeared into the forest.
My mom had a lifelong love of bunnies, and recently when we were reflecting, cleaning out her things, why did she love bunnies? None of us knew. I don't know which one of my sisters called up, Deanna called up Dad and said, "What was the deal with bunnies?" And Dad said, "Oh, Barrington Bunny story." We're like, "What's that?" And so we looked it up, and that's the story. And you know, my mom, you just see so much of my mom in that story. I still remember around Christmas time, and my memory's a little hazy, so if anyone here knows the road of the story, I'd love to hear it. But I remember kind of basically playing Ding Dong Ditch with my mom, but we would bring gifts to people, and we'd leave them on their doorsteps, and my job was to run up there fast, ring the doorbell, drop it, and bolt to the car before I was seen, which was super fun for me. But I believe she signed little cards, "You're Barrington Bunny" or something to that effect. And when we heard that story, and all those memories kind of came flooding back to me. And that's so much of like my mom, because she didn't really need the credit. She just served, and she served pretty anonymously a lot of times. And wow, what a legacy she left for us. One more memory I want to share. My mom was such a gift to us, and again, in ways that maybe people don't even realize. When my wife and I were married and we started to have children, we had a commitment that my wife would stay home with her kids. And I know not every family has that, and that's totally fine. God calls different families different ways, but that's a commitment that we had. And my mom saw that, and we could tell she wanted to honor that and bless that. And so that looked different ways, but when I was in seminary, my mom and dad let us stay in their home for very cheap, and they were in Pasadena fixing up a place they inherited, and then when my mom came back to live in Hacienda Heights and realized that, if she moved back into her house and in a sense displaced us, which she didn't want to do, but it was just there was a lot going on with that story. But nonetheless, what it came down to is she said, "Hey, if I help you buy a home, then you guys could stay close, and we could still be involved, with your kids." And we're like, "Really? Like you would do that?" And my mom helped us buy a home, and so we've been homeowners for the last 17 years or so because of my mom's generosity. And then when the COVID interest rates went so low, we were able to refinance and turn a structure we had in the back of our property into a ADU or a granny flat. And now my daughter and son-in-law are living there, and they share the same commitment. They want to be home for their kids, have Kaylin home. And now we get to like pay that blessing forward to my daughter and her husband and their family. And wow, what a gift my mom gave us in that. And we're just so grateful for that. When Carol, Deanna, and I opened up her trust, we were struck by something we read there. And something from the you see in the Barrington Bunny story, this connection of this sacrificial giving, and it really is a story about Jesus, right? That he's the one, that covers us. He's the one that protects us. He's the one that saves us. And my mom was so connected to her to that story. And when we read this statement in our trust, we were kind of blown away. Here's what she wrote in her trust. The most important thing I can leave to my family and friends is the assurance of my faith in God, as I understand him through his son, Jesus Christ. I'm particularly grateful that he entrusted to me 3 of his precious children to raise for his glory. Each of them has been a special gift to me. They have continued to bring me joy as they have gone on to pick Christian mates and establish homes that honor God. It is my hope and prayer that each of my grandchildren would also come to a mature relationship with Jesus Christ and find the support of fellowship and a family of believers. In my journey through life, I have relied on Christ to be my guide, to sustain me at the low points and to rejoice with me at the high points. I am content knowing that the Lord has a plan for my life. I do not always understand the path he chooses, but I know that he is all I need. As my mom was laying in the hospital, she had a heart attack and was in a coma. She had a heart attack, and she was in a car accident as a result of the heart attack. That happened on Monday. She was in a coma all through Thursday, and we never got to really say goodbye to her because she never regained consciousness. So much. My mom was famous for Irish goodbyes. You guys know what those are? She was kind of at a party. She just kind of slips out, and without saying anything, just because she didn't want to bother anyone. She didn't want to, she just didn't want to put anyone out. That was sort of the idea. But we're just like, where's Grandma? And that's in a sense, it's kind of the way she went. We would have loved to hear from her and to say some things to her. I'm so grateful that when on my birthday, which was in September, I just had nothing planned for lunch that day. No big deal. It was a regular work day. I didn't expect anyone to do anything. I was at work doing my thing. But I thought, it's my birthday. And I thought, well, gosh, my birthday was a big deal for my mom, too. So I texted her. I said, hey, Mom, this day 53 years ago was a big day for both of us. Do you want to go get some lunch? And she said, yeah, sure. And we were texting back and forth. She ended up inviting me over to where she was at Morningside in Fullerton, which I didn't realize how nice that place was. We did it for lunch, and they had cloth napkins, and they came and took our orders, and it was just we were sitting by the water feature, and it was wow. I was like, Mom, you got it pretty good here. But I got to say to her at that lunch, I said, Mom, I told her that story I just told you about her generosity to us and how we're passing that on, and how much that meant to me, and how much that means to Kaylin and Joe, and I'm so glad I got to say those things because, my mom was pretty quiet. And so if you wanted to say something to her, you kind of had to bring it up, and I'm just so glad that I got to do that. And as we were sitting there in that week in the hospital, and we were saying our goodbyes, and again, she wasn't awake to be able to hear them. We believe she was probably able to hear them in the spirit. How people come out of comas, they say they can hear things or could hear things. So we were telling her everything, but we don't know what she was able to hear or not. But I was also that week, I was responsible on that Saturday for a live interview for a conference with a man named Lee Strobel. And so while I was caring for my mom in the hospital and talking to my sisters and our relatives, and I was also reading Lee Strobel's book, prepare for this interview, one of his books. He is a man who has written over 40 books. What's funny about his story is that he was an investigative journalist, an atheist. His wife came to faith in the Lord, and he spent the next 2 years investigating Christianity to try to disprove that Christianity was true. And at the end of that 2 years, he gave up and he came to the Lord himself. And so I was reading Strobel's book that week that my mom passed away called The Case for Heaven, in which he writes about thousands of near-death experiences that have been reported and studied in over 900 publications in peer-reviewed medical and scientific journals over the last 50 years. One of Strobel's interview subjects describes his research into near-death experiences in ways that are remarkably consistent across the board of those who have put their faith in Christ. He says, quote, many other people I've talked to that have had near-death experiences try to describe the astonishing beauty they see in heaven, scenery that takes your breath away, a fragrance so gentle and sweet, colors like nothing on earth, colors that seem to be alive. But then they say, yes, it was amazing, but I didn't even care about it because I couldn't take my eyes off of Jesus. He's beyond beautiful. He's everything I've ever longed for. I realize it's something that profoundly changed me, that everything I've enjoyed in life, the beauty of the outdoors, the love of a parent, the laughter of a child, the fulfillment of marriage, all of that is just a speck compared to the greater reality that's found in him. The greater reality of Christ that is beyond anything we can experience here on earth is what Mom is experiencing right now. And so today we can rejoice in that, even though our hearts are heavy because we miss her, and we really didn't get a chance to say goodbye the way we would have liked. At least, but in Mark 5, there's a story that I love about Jesus that testifies to how my mom lived her faith. It's a story of the woman that was cured of bleeding. Many of you know the story. It says that a woman was there who had been the subject of bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." I love this story for a couple reasons. First, in the context, Jesus was on his way somewhere pretty important. The leader of the synagogue had come up and told Jesus moments before this that his daughter had died, and he was on the way to raise her from the dead. But Jesus had time to connect with this woman. He did not allow her to escape his notice and care. This is so much like my mom. My mom saw us. She spent time with us. She often didn't have a lot to say, but she loved just being with us. And I think I took for granted how powerful that was. Second, this woman was stuck in shame, and she was expecting judgment. The passage says she fell at his feet, trembling with fear. Because of her condition, she was considered ritually unclean and would have been an outcast. Jesus, seeing her shame, not only stops to connect with her, but calls her daughter. He lifts her out of her shame, heals her, and speaks her true identity over her. That so reminds me of my mom, because she accepted those into her family that she didn't have to accept. And she didn't do it out of obligation. She loved them, making sure they were included in gift giving and invited to various family functions. And let me conclude by saying that this invitation of Jesus to be truly seen by him in all of our shame, in our weakness, to be healed of our brokenness, to have our true identities as sons and daughters of our Father in heaven be spoken over us, that invitation is available to all of us today, as Deanna so clearly and powerfully articulated earlier. You know, God created a perfect world and put us in it to be a blessing to us and to share a love relationship with us. But our scriptures clearly teach that a rebellion against him, our sin, has not only corrupted our own hearts, minds, and even our bodies, but has also brought dysfunction and corruption into our world. And what is the penalty for sin? For disfiguring the beauty God created? For turning our backs on him? Again, the scriptures teach the wages of sin is death. That is why Jesus had to die for our sake. Because of God's outrageous love for us, he sent his own son to die in our place and to take the penalty for our sin upon him. And we have the amazing privilege of receiving the life that Jesus made possible simply by asking Jesus to be Lord of our lives and inviting his Spirit to live inside of us. Of course, there's a simplicity to that, but it's not easy because it involves changing who's in charge of our lives. When we come to Christ, we are saying he's in charge. And the sad thing is that because we are not yet fully delivered from this world and our corrupted hearts, minds, and bodies, we will follow him imperfectly. We will still hurt ourselves and hurt others. But if we've invited God to work in us, he continues to shape us and grow us as we continue to submit to his leadership. And when our time comes, we will get to experience what Mom is experiencing, life as it was originally intended. No more tears, sickness, pain, or death. Life in intimate and loving connection with the one who loves us more than we can imagine. Jesus describes his life in John 10:10, where he says, the enemy has come to steal, to kill, and destroy. But I have come that you might have life and have it to the full, or some translations say have it abundantly. We do have an enemy that is helping us make a mess of this world and our own lives. But Jesus is offering abundant life in the midst of it, and that can start now. And that is the invitation available to all of us today, that I know my mom would be honored, and a part of her story was to lead you more toward faith in him. Would you pray with me? Father, we just thank you so much for my mom. We release her to you. We know that she is in your hands. We thank you for the life that she lived, the way that her quiet service and humble heart touched all of us. We're so grateful that she was in our lives. We look forward, Lord, to reunification in heaven with her. I thank you, Lord, that she is right now with, we think, we don't know, but we think she's right now with my own son, Michael, loving him just like she loved her grandchildren and great-grandchildren here. And so, Lord, we look forward to that day of no more tears, no more pain, Lord, and we thank you that she's there with you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
If you are able, please stand and we will sing of the faithfulness of our God.
There is no
our God is faithful, and we can trust that Freya has been ushered in to that marvelous party we call the ongoing eternal banquet. But until that time, we have a party out on the back patio. You can go through this door, or love warm you today and each day of your living. I'll see you on the patio. Amen.